Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. We're going to venture off into a different kind of video today, and we're going to be talking about my horror movie tier list. But of course, before we get into our tier list, don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you like the content that we're putting out. It would really help the channel, and I would really appreciate it. So I guess the typical tier list definitely ranks from like S, A, B, C, D. So I kind of switched it up a little bit for S to be super scary, A is scary, B is better than C but not really better than A, C stands for can be scarier, and D is don't think you're that scary. Alright, so I actually categorized them into like little baby sections to talk about them. So the first ones that I'm going to talk about are like oldies but goodies and also remakes of like old movies. And then the second one I'm going to talk about are Asian horror story movies. Then we have our like psychological slash Blumhouse productions. And then we have a random one at the end, which I find pretty creepy. So yeah, let's go. So the first movie on this little, I guess, category is The Exorcist. So I think what really scares me about The Exorcist, it incorporates religion. And there's something about these old practices of like religion and supernatural beings that really come together and like freak you out. History has told us, and you've seen so many like churches and like priests. This kind of feels like it could happen in real life. One of the most iconic moments is like, you know, when she's walking down stairs in a bridge. I used to do that as a kid. Definitely A+ for effort, but I'm gonna put you in B first. Alright, so the second one on this list is The Blair Witch Project. This one came out when I was pretty young. I don't remember too much about it, but I do remember that it was handheld as you watch it. That made it seem so scary. It made it seem like you were like walking through, you know, a haunted house or something. But I feel like overall the general tone of the movie, you know, it could be scarier. I think it's so important that it started like a huge like new angle for horror movies. Like so many people have adapted. I think it should definitely be not the worst, because I still think there are like definitely a lot of elements of fear in the movie. I'm gonna put it B for now, but we'll see as more movies add on. Alright, the next one on our old generation horror movie list is actually Halloween. Of course, that is a favorite of so many people. There's like such a, you know, following behind Halloween, and every Halloween you definitely see someone in a Michael Myers mask. This one definitely scared me as a child because it had a lot of surprises. So Michael Myers is pretty sneaky and he just shows up a lot of places. So yeah, let's not mess with him. And also the whole fact that it has like this very iconic theme song. And so whenever you hear that, you're instantly like, you know, taken back to that time and you actually feel that fear again. For me, I'm gonna rank that C for now, because honestly the only element of surprise like was whenever he showed up randomly, and the whole music thing, that was pretty scary. So other than that, it's just like a generic like, you know, thriller murder kind of movie. So alright, so the next movie on our list is actually from the Final Destination series. So I know a lot of people will probably be like, what? You find that scary? How is that scary? Let me just tell you, like I mentioned before, I find things scary when they have the like an actual like probability of happening in real life. So that's what really scares me. So Final Destination, let me tell you, it me up as a kid. I was terrified of doing anything, and honestly I still am terrified of doing a lot of things, and the scares still scare me until today. Like, oh, remember that time in Final Destination? Remember that time in Final Destination? Remember when that person did that thing and then boom, in Final Destination? Yeah. So I'm gonna put this in A for now. Alright, so moving on to our last movie in the old generation horror movie category. This is It, Pennywise the Clown. I remember growing up, my sisters used to tell me all about this movie and how it scared them. So this is like the original It that we're talking about. And they were like, I will never come back from this movie. I'm scarred for life. So I was like, what the heck is this thing? There are definitely so much elements of fear in It, and I feel like a lot of people are terrified of Pennywise the clown. If you have a clown like phobia in general. Like, why would you watch this movie? Like, honestly, it would just like terrify the shit out of you because Pennywise has the creepiest face ever. I feel like even if you didn't watch the movie and you just saw his face, you would have problem sleeping. So, you know. So I think it is definitely, you know, one of the good old classics that we know and we love. And so I'm gonna put it A for now. So next we're moving on to a category. This is actually the Asian horror movie category. I have 2 videos in this category and we're gonna rank them. So the first one we're gonna talk about is Shudder. Right, so Shudder actually has a like American adaptation of the film, but we're gonna talk about the Thai one because that's the one I watched. Like even just like saying its name gives me the creeps, and looking into a camera gives me the creeps talking about this. Obviously by its name you know that it's about a camera, and oh, I just get the heebie-jeebies. I really didn't want to you know, talk about this, but here we are. So the story for Shudder is actually really sad. It has the horror elements as well as a really good story. So that's why for me I put Shudder under my S. So let me just move it up there for now. So the next one on our list is actually a Malaysian horror movie, and this one actually hits really close to home because if you didn't know, I am Malaysian, and so this story definitely scares the bejesus out of me. So this movie is called PONTIANAK HARUM SUNDAL MALAM, and there's a song that goes with it. So along with like Halloween, this is also a movie that kind of ties in a song with it. So this movie is actually about a Pontianak who is actually a mother and her unborn child who were killed. If you actually want to check out a video on Pontianak, we actually did one, so definitely click here to check it out. This movie scared me to my core because of the insane amount of jump scares. The visuals also are really scary. It's like the traditional, you know, long hair, scary eyes. For Pontianak, I'm actually going to put it on A. Now we're gonna move on to the psychological horror side of things. All of these shows, the 5 that I'm talking about, are Blumhouse production movies. The first one that we have is actually Split. So obviously these movies are more like psychological thriller, and if you didn't know about Split, it's about a man who has DID, dissociative identity disorder. So in Split, I feel like the horrors definitely come from a more like psychological background, obviously because it's a psychological thriller. Having to deal with your internal struggle, and especially someone, you know, like the character with DID, like they have different alters, and all those different alters have, you know, their own struggles. That definitely comes in to play when you're thinking about the horror element. And there's also obviously, you know, one of his alters is called the Beast, and that's where, you know, the physically scary element comes out, and you see that towards the end. So let's rank Split. I'm going to put Split, I'm gonna put it on C. Can be scarier. The next movie that we have is Glass. So Glass is actually the 3rd installment. First is Unbreakable, second is Split, and third is Glass. So Glass actually follows, you know, Mr. Glass, and he's an individual that we see in Unbreakable. So if you didn't know, in Unbreakable, Bruce Willis's character is essentially unbreakable, and Glass, Mr. Glass, actually has osteo imperfecta, which is a disorder or a disease where your bones are very brittle and it breaks easily, so they call him Mr. Glass because he breaks easily. Sort of psychological thriller, but also kind of like superhero action movie. Kind of like my favorite versus my least favorite together. So this movie is definitely not scary, but it's a good conclusion to all of the psychological distress that you have had since, you know, the first 2 movies. I'm gonna say can be scarier with Split. Alright, so the next movie in our Blumhouse category, it's a really random one, but because I really like Lucy Hale and Maggie Q, I watched this movie. It's called Fantasy Island. So actually this movie revolves around like these individuals who go to the island, and basically their biggest desire and their biggest fantasy can become a reality in this island, but it comes at a cost. Some scenes were a little bit gory, so that played a bit into like the traditional horror, I guess, element, but overall it was honestly a pretty shitty movie. Definitely a cool concept of like, you know, making you question your humanity, but aside from that, not really scary, not really there with like the gore or the action. That is my first one in the don't think you're that scary list. Alright, so the next movie on this list is honestly one of my favorite movies. It's so creepy, it's so scary, but not in a traditional sense. It's Get Out. So let's talk a little bit about Get Out. I feel like Get Out came out in an important time in America, and I feel like it really touched some people and really scared the rest. Because Get Out, you know, takes place in a pretty conservative town, which we don't know. And we start seeing these really, really twisted things start happening. And honestly, that is enough to scare anyone. Like, it really scared me because these things actually happen in real life. There are people who think this way, and there are communities that may be this extreme. So honestly, because this movie is that terrifying, I'm moving it up to the S tier. So I feel like with this movie we have, you know, two layers of fear, the underlying one and obviously the one that's being presented. So like with you know, this movie, you see individuals who look just like you trying to kill you, and they just want to take over your like place. So yeah, that's like definitely very creepy. You would never want to see yourself trying to kill yourself and, you know, have someone else replace you and take over your life. There will always be someone who wants to take over your life, or who wishes that they had the life you had, and you don't even think for a second how it is to have their life. So this movie definitely pushes you to think about that, and to think about what would happen if you had to like swap places. I'm gonna rate us an A for scary. Alright, so for the last movie that I'm gonna talk about, it's a little bit of a wild card. Definitely not really in one of these categories, but it fits more into like the Get Out genre. And it's called MIDSOMMAR. So in this movie you see a cult and they're celebrating the Midsummer Festival, but they have very graphic ways to celebrate it. And yeah, please insert clips now. So I think one of the creepiest things about this movie is like you see like, you know, dismembering or like someone wearing somebody else's face and or limbs on the ground. And I think towards the end, or like at the end of the movie, it gets even creepier because of decisions that the character has to make. And so she has to make a pretty bad decision on who to kill. And so she decides to kill whoever she kills, and you see this character go from, you know, so I mean in general the idea of cults, definitely freaky, definitely creepy, the way that, you know, people are being brainwashed to think a certain way. And so in this movie you definitely see this whole like, you know, brainwashing process and the breakdown of someone who is like completely, you know, functional in society to someone who believes in this cult. I'm gonna put it in scary. So that is all for my horror movie tier list. I know it was a mouthful and I can feel that in my throat and my nose, and I'm getting more congested as I talk. But thank you guys so much for staying tuned to the very end, and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Comment down below anything you would want me to do next, and also subscribe to our channel if you haven't already, and hit that notification bell to stay updated to all of our latest videos. If you want to watch any of our old videos, click here for more Marvel stuff. And click here for more Southeast Asian myths and horror stories, like the Pontianak I was talking about earlier. And don't forget, don't look at the demon. I'll see you guys next time.